The Indianapolis Colts are looking to get back into the win column this weekend as they face the Tennessee Titans at Lucas Oil Stadium. So, what must the Colts do to capture the W? And why are the Colts under a lot of pressure to get the victory? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined by the GOAT himself, my co-host, my partner in crime, Drake Wally. Drake, we're not talking about the Broncos game anymore. It's in the past, the fumbles in the past, the trick plays in the past. It's time to focus ahead on the Tennessee Titans. And while the Colts may not be playing for the playoffs, I think we can still use the final three games of the season. Now, mathematically, they still have a chance to get in, but a lot of stuff has to happen. I think the last three games of the season, what really needs to be focused on is number one, getting some momentum heading into the offseason. But number two, really use this time to start evaluating some players, especially the young players that you really still don't have concrete answers to on yet.
Yeah, you've got a unique opportunity in some ways here. I mean, obviously, you still need to play like you can make the playoffs, right? Because you still mathematically have an opportunity to. But realistically, that's not going to happen. So, yes, I think that you need to kind of maybe see what kind of talent you have. Now, the matchup that's ahead is a team that is in a really weird spot right now. You know, they just switched quarterbacks and, they look very, very unsure what's happening now and in their future. So I think this is an opportunity where you have it's got bounce back, right, written all over it for the offense. But it's probably going to be still a hard fought game that Tennessee is not going to let up easy. So
No, and nor should they. I mean,
no.
You don't add. I mean, I know fans sometimes want players or want teams to tank, but that's not how it works in the NFL. These guys are still putting the tape out there. A lot of these guys are working towards bonuses toward the end of the year for their contracts. Some of these guys are going to be unrestricted free agents, so they want to put good tape out there. So it's going to be a much more difficult game than I think maybe some people realize. Yes, the Titans are 3-11. I think according to Tankathon, they have a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, or if not, it's right there close to a top 5 pick currently. And we all know that the Titans Colts games are always close. In fact, the Colts only beat the Titans by 3 earlier in the season with Joe Flacco. So we're going to talk about this game, really dive into what the Colts need to do to come out on top. Some guys that we're going to be looking at to see to really evaluate, and then there is that question. They face tremendous pressure. That's the title of the episode, to beat the Titans. Why is that? You may think, why do they face that pressure? Because playoffs aren't really an option. So what's to play for? I've got a good answer for you. But guys, as people come into the chat, we've already got our first super chat of the evening from Hustle Man Jones. Thank you so much, brother, for all of your support. We really, really do appreciate it. Hustle Man Jones is asking, is Anthony fixable? We're going to talk about Anthony Richardson tonight, as we always do. But yeah, I mean, I don't think everything that I've seen out of Anthony Richardson, I don't see a fatal flaw that can't be improved on. That's something that can't be fixed with reps, with coaching, with just more game experience. And I think that's a big thing with Anthony Richardson is there isn't, at least it hasn't become evident yet, of something that isn't fixable, because a lot of the accuracy issues, Drake, it's just mechanical. And yes, CC struggled under pressure, but it's under pressure when his mechanics start to falter. Right? And a lot of young quarterbacks face that. So in my opinion, I don't see anything on the film that shows me, or it gives me alarm, that Anthony Richardson can't fix it, but he just has to go out there and fix it. That's the big thing.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, the reps, because he still has only played a handful of games. Obviously now you're starting to want to see some of those things get put together, and you have. Now you've seen it happen against teams like the Patriots. They suck. Teams like the Jets, they suck. But the defense, especially for the Jets, was not a bad defense, okay? And you saw what can be in that game, and it's still about limiting turnovers. It's about the fundamentals, like putting your foot in the right direction when you're throwing and your footwork when you're, in the pocket. So it's going to come with time still, and it's going to come with reps still. So I think that fixable, I don't even think he's broken, man. I think that it's just a matter of finding that right rhythm. And right now it's just been a very weird year. And I still go back to Kenny Moore's comments earlier in the year. I can't get those out of my head. There's clearly something wrong in the locker room.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But Hustle Man Jones, really appreciate all the support, and of course, we're glad that you're here and glad that you show up live to almost every single episode. We definitely appreciate it. Got another super chat from Yim. You guys are getting us off to a hot start tonight. Yim is asking, give me your honest opinion. Give Ballard, Steichen, and AR another year, or clean house now and get in on the Arch Manning sweepstakes. And then Yim says, assuming Arch is in the next draft, because I mean that's big, because if I'll be honest, Jim, I kind of be shocked if Arch Manning comes out next year. He's eligible to, but that would only give him 1 year of starting experience, and we know the Manning family. We know that Arch Manning has a lot of good advice around him. Again, I'd be shocked if Arch Manning comes out with only a year of experience starting. I think, and he's even said he wants to be there for 4 years. So I would say probably the 2027 NFL draft is when you're going to see Arch Manning declare. But I think if it was up to me, I mean, obviously, if I want Steichen and AR to have another year, and Ballard is tied to those guys. So I'm not ready to give up on Steichen or Anthony Richardson yet. I think if it was up to me, again, like I said last episode, I'm more on the fence about Ballard than anything else. But yeah, I think you still give these guys another year because they're all tied together. And if it doesn't work out after next year, after 2025, that's when it's time to kind of clean house and start from scratch.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Jim. I think that I'll go with what I believe will happen, and that's that you are at least going to get another year of Ballard, Steichen, and Anthony Richardson. Now, and we're going to talk about the Titans game, but then the Giants and the Jaguars, these don't appear to be big games, but you also can't go out there and lose all of them and end the season on a 4-game losing streak at 6-11. Okay, because who knows what would happen then. So these are still some big games.
Yeah, exactly. Yim, thank you so much for all your support. We really do appreciate it. And another super chat, Paul Wilson, our good friend Paul, thank you for all of your support. And Paul, he's getting the sarcasm out here, guys. More great news. A.D. Mitchell in an article today was rated as the worst rookie receiver in the NFL. Ballard is cooking now, boys. I mean, it's sure. I mean, the ratings don't really mean anything, but I mean, it certainly, I think we had higher hopes for A.D. Mitchell coming into this season than what has been produced so far, Drake. And I think you're just hoping that he maybe it's a rough year, but you start looking, the Colts have him for 4 more years, obviously under his rookie deal. You can start to put these things together. And I think if you want to look at glass half full, A.D. Mitchell is at least winning the first part of the route, and he's definitely still a guy that creates incredible amount of separation. I mean, and you look at the analytics, that's not just something that's made up. A.D. Mitchell is one of the best receivers in the NFL already at creating separation. It's finishing the route, it's finishing the play that needs tremendous work. And again, you kind of hope that under the tutelage of Reggie Wayne and with more experience that he can get there. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, and I like what you mentioned about A.D. Mitchell. There are positives, man. He's got them out there. He's showing them. It's just a matter of, like, when contact appears to be around, he kind of does shy away from it. He doesn't have the finishing of his catches. He can get the route started. He can get open, and he can get the ball thrown to him, but he hasn't been able to finish some of those big catches, drops, other things too. I think that, it's going to come with time. I also didn't really like his answer after getting asked about the reverse pass, turned into Ed Reed. It's like, no, man, you sat there for over a second with the football, which in the NFL is plenty of time for a guy like Nick Benito to be able to make a play on the football. So I think A.D. Mitchell has a little growing up to do, honestly. But I think it was Kevin Bowen actually that put out that he caught, I think it was 20 of 49 of his targets this year, which, I mean, that is really bad. So plenty of room to grow, but the raw potential is there, like Andrew said.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we'll have to, the jury's still out on AD Mitchell. Obviously, hasn't been a
Oh
great
yeah.
start to his career, but I'm not going to bury the kid all just before this first season isn't even over. But Paul, again, really appreciate all of your support. Really, really do appreciate it, guys. We're 9 minutes in, haven't even started talking because of your support. We love the support, and we know you guys are supporting us on our socials as well. You're liking Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. You're following at Colts on _SI on X. And I know most of you are already subscribed to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel, but you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Give us a 5-star review on podcast, not on YouTube, but hit that bell on YouTube. Turn those notifications on so you never miss us. And you're joining us tonight on a Wednesday night, one of our odd evenings since our schedule's a little wonky this week. But if you can't catch us live because you're expecting us to be on Thursday night, or like your stats, Matt, you have a bowling tournament this evening and you're not able to join us, you can still catch us on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts. So make sure you subscribe there and give us a 5-star review while you're at it as well. Drake, let's dive on into this game this weekend. Colts Titans at Lucas Oil Stadium. Colts are actually 3.5-point favorites entering this one against the 3-11 Titans. Over under at 42.5. Vegas is not expecting this to be a high scoring affair between these two teams, and why would they? When these two teams met in week 5, I think it was. I'm not. Yes, week 5 or week 6, one of those two, earlier in the season. The Colts won 20-17. So it was a defensive struggle for sure. The Titans, their defense is definitely much better than their offense. But Joe Flacco is not the quarterback of this team. It's Anthony Richardson instead. And I think that the Colts, after what happened last week, they are looking to go out there and put up more offensive numbers and execute better on offense, certainly than they did a week ago.
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got, or like you mentioned, the Titans' defense. They first off are far better than their offense, but their defense is actually pretty good. I mean, they're one of the best as far as yards allowed per game overall. They're stout against the run. I know that I believe it's like 12th in the NFL against the run. But you're talking about that they've got a solid pass defense too, and they're going to present issues, for pretty much any offense out there at times. So I think that it's going to be really, really interesting to see how Steichen goes about his game plan in this contest, Andrew, because of the monumental collapse that happened at Mile High. You have to answer back, and you can't really afford too many turnovers in the NFL. So you're hoping that he's got Richardson ready to take care of the football and not throw 2 interceptions.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that there's going to be an opportunity for Anthony Richardson to have a better game. Now, on the surface, you might not think so, because when you look at just the raw stats, the Titans rank 3rd in the NFL against the pass. They're only allowing 182.2 yards per game. But I do have the stats of the day. He sent them to me earlier. He also wanted me to tell you guys, go Irish this weekend. He's cheering for Notre Dame for a win over IU. We all know stats, Matt, the big Notre Dame fan that he is. That's why I'm rocking the Notre Dame shirt tonight for the big playoff game on Friday night. But stats, Matt, the first stats, Matt, stat of the day, presented by Busch Light. We'll do Busch Light. We'll do Busch Light Peach since she's not here. But the Colts are ranked 24th in passing efficiency in the NFL. The Titans are only 18th in defensive passing efficiency. So, and Drake, what we saw last week against the Cincinnati Bengals is that the Titans defense certainly broke down. Now, that offense of the Cincinnati Bengals, I would say objectively, much more potent than the Indianapolis Colts. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and the like, and they certainly put up very good numbers against this Titans defense. But I think that the Colts can take some things away from that, and that this Titans defense doesn't allow very many yards, whether it's run or the pass, there's going to be some holes in the defense that the Colts can certainly take advantage of. So, Drake, what are your expectations for Anthony Richardson this weekend back home against the Titans?
I think he's still going to have to take care of the football because, like you mentioned with Joe Burrow in that game, 26 for 37, that's still 70%. Still threw 2 interceptions, still fumbled once. I mean, this defense will make you pay, all right? And they made a guy like Joe Burrow, who while he's had a fantastic fantasy football season, trust me, I know. They haven't been winning. And, so there are games where he's struggled, and the Titans can make you pay for it. And Richardson's coming off of a game where he struggled with the accuracy. He struggled with adjusting to the pressure. He struggled with, the turnover. So this team doesn't have a good record, but they are going to bring it on defense. And they have the playmakers to do that with guys like Simmons and guys like Landry and, others as well. So I expect Anthony Richardson to take care of the football, and I'm just hoping that there's more of the quick passing game in this one.
Yeah, in order to combat the pass rush, certainly, you hope that the Colts wide receivers can win at the line of scrimmage, and that Anthony Richardson can deliver the ball quickly, like you mentioned it, Drake. I mean, the defensive line for the Titans is full of some really, really good players. Obviously, Jeffrey Simmons and Devondre Sweat in the middle there. When you're looking at the pass rushers, you have Harold Landry, who leads the team with 8 sacks. Arden Key on the other side, who's second on the team. I think he had 6.5 sacks on the season. And then Jeffrey Simmons with 4. Those guys can get after the quarterback. Now, it's not so much the sack numbers, Drake. It's because, as we've seen, Anthony Richardson does a really good job of fending off those defenders and not taking very many sacks. However, it's the pressure. And obviously, we saw last week how much the pressure really affected Anthony Richardson when the Broncos started sending more and more pressure, more blitzes, and the Colts offensive line simply couldn't pick it up. Now, you're hoping that Bernard Ryman and Quentin Nelson have a better game. You're hoping you get Ryan Kelly back and he has a good game. Obviously, no Braden Smith. So Matt Gonzalez is going to be there at right tackle, but it's that right guard spot once again. While Mark Lewinsky had a really good game against the New England Patriots, I mean, he had arguably the worst game of any Colts offensive lineman all season. Against the Denver Broncos last week. It's really imperative for this offensive line to gel, for them to win up front. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it did seem like the offensive line did a much better job against the Titans earlier in the season. Granted, they did have I thought they had Will Fries, or maybe Will Fries got injured in that game against the Jaguars. I forget, but I think it's going to be key for this offensive line to really step up and not allow that pressure, because we know the Titans are going to send the pressure. Every team has been sending pressure against Anthony Richardson because that's when his mechanics seem to really deteriorate, is when he's under pressure. That can't happen this weekend. And I think until Anthony Richardson can go out there and prove that he can get the ball out not only quickly but accurately, and the Colts really start to place a focus on that in their passing game, teams are just going to continue to send pressure and dare Anthony Richardson to throw out of that pressure.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's been a very limited amount, but he's shown he can do it. Okay, like he's shown he can respond to it. He can hit the throws. He can stand firm in the pocket and make, deliver the ball. Now, the thing is, again, this is going to be, they didn't play Anthony Richardson. They played Joe Flacco for it. They played Joe Flacco. So the Titans are going to get a completely different look here. The difference is, though, Flacco was dink and dunk. Flacco was get rid of the ball quick. Richardson's far more of let's see what we got downfield. I've got the arm to literally cover every blade of turf, all right, or grass or whatever the hell you're using. It's going to be absolutely crucial that we'll say it probably 4 or 5 more times. You got to take care of the football. This team just forced Joe Burrow multiple times to throw the football to him. So Richardson has got to bounce back, because right now his interception to touchdown ratio is looking pretty rough on him.
And I really do think that it's not only just in the passing game, Drake, but it's in the run game for Anthony Richardson. I want to see more design runs for Anthony Richardson, kind of like we saw in those 3 games prior to that Broncos game. Really lean into the quarterback run game, because here is another stat of the day. Anthony Richardson has 238 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in scrambles with a 48% explosive run rate, which is 10 plus yards on scrambles, and a plus 3.5 rushing yards over expected on scrambles, both second best among quarterbacks. The Titans now have allowed 279 scramble yards, which is the 6th most in the NFL. Now, scramble yards are different than quarterback run game. Obviously, scramble yards are if Anthony Richardson does get out of the pocket and he's able to pick up some yards with his legs on those passing downs or on those passing plays. So maybe that's something that Shane Steichen talks to Richardson about, or Jim Bob Cooter, and make sure that that's instilled in him that this week the Titans are susceptible to giving up yards to quarterbacks if he can escape. So while Anthony Richardson always keeps his eyes down the field, and I think that's actually one of the better qualities that Richardson has, is that when the play breaks down, he continues to keep his eyes down the field to try to make a play through the air rather than just immediately trying to take off. But if the opportunity's there, take it. Take off, get some extra yardage, especially since the Titans are, like I said, they're susceptible to giving up quite a bit of yardage to opposing quarterbacks when they start to scramble. I think that's one way that if the pressure does get to Anthony Richardson, he can still make a good play and he can really move forward and keep the offense on track rather than necessarily throwing a bad pass that gets intercepted or throwing an incompletion. Now, you don't want to force it and try to be Superman all the time, but certainly you want to use that to your advantage when you have that ability to scramble.
Well, and it's also such a huge part of this offense. Like, I mean, you want to be able to take both Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, and you want to be able to use them both and get both of them going and lathered up so that they're hitting good runs consistently, because then it confuses the defense and it really throws people off on defense, which opens up those plays downfield we all love to see. So I think that you're hoping you get at least like maybe 8, 9, maybe even 10 carries, because I feel like the more you give Richardson the ball, kind of not Derrick Henry, he isn't Derrick Henry, but just his size, his speed.
Wears defenses down.
Just absolutely will beat you constantly. I mean, and he'll take his shoulder pads and will bludgeon you with them. So, I mean, that's a lot to handle. And I think the more opportunities you give Richardson, 2 things. It means the offense is moving well because you don't have to take as many shots or passes often. So I think it means things are going well. But it also just gives him more opportunities to have explosive runs. I know he hasn't had that big run yet. But, I mean, against, the Broncos, he had a pretty nice like 20+ yard touchdown run. So it's possible to happen in this game too. I love it when you're able to get him involved. So I really hope they can get upward of like 8 or 9 carries or maybe a little more.
Yeah, definitely. We got a lot of super chats again to get to. So let's go through them. Drake, Joe McHenry, thank you for all of your support. Joe asks, would you call for similar discipline for Jonathan Taylor and the drop as compared to Anthony Richardson and the tap out? I think they're 2 completely different situations, honestly. I mean, Jonathan Taylor has shown what he can do. He's a professional. It was a mistake. I think the Colts have moved past it. It's not like Jonathan Taylor is a 22-year-old kid that's learning, and I think again, the benching of Anthony Richardson, maybe the tap out played a little bit a part of it, but if it did, it was very small. It was not the tap out that was the final straw in benching Anthony Richardson. I mean, from all accounts, it really didn't have anything to do with the tap out. So no, Jonathan Taylor, I don't think should be benched. Yes, it was a bad moment, but it's done and gone with. And he's shown how, he knows what he did was wrong. You move on, and you need Jonathan Taylor out there to win these final 3 games. But Joe, thank you for the question. Really, really do appreciate it. Paul Wilson with another super chat. Thank you so much again for all of your support. And Paul says, you can't tell me AR wasn't horrible last week. He's showed 0 signs of improvement, in my opinion. At some point, we need to quit making excuses. What do you think, Drake? Do you think that Anthony Richardson has shown signs of improvement, or do you think it's kind of been the same all year?
It's a really interesting question, because I feel like it's both. I feel like there's times where you're like, man, he looks worse than he did in his rookie season, even if it was just a small sample of games. But there have been moments, Paul, where you look and you go, okay, he's getting it, And weirdly, I saw multiple against the Lions. I saw multiple against the Jets, obviously, and you saw multiple against the Patriots, and you see the grit and the clutch factor in this kid, and that's so damn hard to find in the NFL. The talent, it's all right there. Okay, so I think that he has shown some signs of improvement, but on the other end of it, overall, if you had to go with how has this year been better and where he's shown improvement or where he's shown that he might be worse, I would go with the latter. I think that he's definitely shown more signs of like, whoa, that's not good, than wow, that's fantastic.
And Paul, I don't really agree that he's shown zero signs of improvement, especially since the benching. He's been a much better quarterback. You turn on the film of the benching, and in particular the first 3 games after. Yes, he was bad against the Broncos. That's obvious. It was not a good game. But those 3 games after the benching, I mean, he was admittedly much better. The film is much better. His mechanics are much better. And I think we also need to remember that quarterback development isn't linear. You're not going to see him just get better every single game. That's just, I mean, obviously you'd like to see that, but that's just not how the real world works. And I think we've talked about it quite a few times on this show, where you're going to see some games where Anthony Richardson does look really, really good, maybe a couple games in a row. And then you could very well see a game where he looks really bad, or a couple games that he looks really, really bad. And then another game where he looks good, another 2 that he looks bad, another 4 that he looks really good. Okay. It's quarterback development is not linear, and it never is, no matter the quarterback. So again, you want to see the overall development once the season is over. And if by chance that Anthony Richardson puts together the 3 games remaining, he puts together those 3 games that look like the first 3 after the benching, then you're talking about like 6 out of the final 7 games of the season where Anthony Richardson looks like a much better quarterback. So I would disagree. I have seen much improvement from Anthony Richardson since the benching, in particular with his mechanics, with his decision making. He was bad last week against the Broncos. There's no denying that. But overall, I think you have seen it be much better since coming back from the benching. But thank you again so much for all of your support. We really do appreciate it. And then finally, Hustleman Jones with another super chat. Again, thank you for all of your support. How do you feel about the JT drop ball? We spent a lot of time last episode talking about that. So if you missed that pretty much led off the show where we talked about the Jonathan Taylor drop ball. But Drake, just real quick, obviously it can't happen. It's an inexcusable play. We talked about that. Jonathan Taylor knows it. The team knows it. And really, it was the turning point in that game last week.
Yeah, you heard Sean Payton even talk about it. And
if you need,
that was significant.
If you need to take a second, brother.
No, hey, you know what? I'm going to power through this. No, at the end of the day, you got a guy who's been an All-Pro. He's been a Pro Bowler. He's led the entire NFL in rushing yards. He's been there and done that, and he's had success in the NFL. He just cannot drop the football. That's a rookie mistake. You just can't do it. So,
yeah, Drake powering through it. He sounds like he's about to just absolutely die there from a cough. Good for you, brother. But for doing that, I would have had to take at least a breather. But Hustleman Jones,
for you, Hustleman Jones.
Thank you for all of your support, and Drake for absolutely powering through that. But Drake, let's talk about Jonathan Taylor in this game, because he definitely needs to do that. He definitely needs to have a bounce back performance against the Titans. I think so, to make up for what happened against the Broncos, because even after that run where he said he should have been a touchdown, and yes, I understand Jonathan Taylor had over 100 yards. He was not himself. He did not really produce much after the drop ball. He's got to do so on Sunday against the Titans. So when you're looking at the Titans again, they're pretty solid against the run, not as good as they are against the pass. They rank 12th against the run, allowing 115.2 yards per game. And then when it comes to rushing efficiency, another stat of the day, the Colts are 17th in rushing efficiency on offense, and the Titans are 13th in defensive rushing efficiency as well. So pretty evenly matched when it comes to going up against the run. Obviously, we talked about Simmons and Sweat in the middle there, Drake. When you look at their linebackers, Kenneth Murray leads the team in tackles. Jerome Baker's out there. The Titans don't have Ernest Jones anymore. They sent him away. Ernest Jones was in my opinion, a really good linebacker addition for them. They sent him away. So what are you expecting out of Jonathan Taylor this week? And Drake, do you think he needs to have a redemption game for what happened last week?
I mean, honestly, I would expect Jonathan Taylor, I would expect him to probably not have as good of a game when it comes to his yards per carry. I mean, he had like 107. I mean, a lot of it was from that big run, but I mean, he definitely had an impactful game. Outside of that dropped ball, you're looking at a pretty good game from Jonathan Taylor, But I think that he needs to have a bounce back performance because of what Hustleman Jones mentioned earlier. And it is that fumble. It is because after that, you had 24 points scored on you. It really did throw the Colts into complete disarray. So I think that he has pride on the line in this game. And I think that when you talk about an NFL player and their pride on the line, especially when they've been to the height of success that Jonathan Taylor's been, I think that you are looking at a guy who needs a huge performance. Now, if he goes out there, 20 carries, 75 yards, a touchdown, Colts win, that's good enough, right? But for him, deep in himself, he needs to go out there and have like 150 plus yards on the ground, just absolutely smack the Titans. That's the mentality he needs to have.
Yeah, and I think I don't think he even played in the last game when the Colts played the Titans earlier in the year. I'm pretty sure that Jonathan Taylor was out. Yes, he was. He was out with an injury, and then with that ankle injury, the Colts only had 80 yards rushing earlier this year, going up against the Tennessee Titans, averaging 2.9 yards per carry. So definitely not what you want to see. And I think that if the Colts are going to beat the Titans this time around, Drake, you're going to need that game out of Jonathan Taylor. You're going to need to see him get 20, 25 carries. And again, I think it comes back to the offensive line. The offensive line really needs to dominate in this one. I do think that in order for the Colts to win, or at least to have for them to have the advantage on the offensive side of the ball, it's got to start up front. You need to have an offensive line that performs like they were earlier in the season, not like they have been performing the last few games. So that's going to be crucial. Again, dominating the line of scrimmage, especially when you have so many big time players up front for the Tennessee Titans on defense, Drake. If the Colts can do that, then I think they're going to be just fine. However, if they're getting pushed back, they can't open up any holes in the run game, they're allowing that pressure to get to Anthony Richardson, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, look, if the offensive, like you mentioned, it's going to start with the offensive line. If they can get the protection, even if Richardson has a couple of early, miscues or anything like that, that's probably going to be the best way he's going to get back on track, is by being protected, regardless of if he's good at avoiding sacks, which the Titans, by league standards, are near the back of team sack rankings. It doesn't matter. The pressure is really what gets to a guy like Anthony Richardson. So I'm looking at the offensive line. If they do decide to start Mark Lewinsky, I'm really looking at him. It's going to be also a big game for the right side of that offensive line. Of course, it removes center if Ryan Kelly returns.
And now, Drake, I do want to talk about the wide receivers for a second, because last week against the Broncos, it really outside of Michael Pittman, and even Michael Pittman had a costly fumble as well. The wide receivers did not do nearly enough to help out Anthony Richardson and in the passing game. And I'm looking at two guys. Alec Pierce is dealing with a concussion, so
Yeah.
if I had to guess, Alec Pierce probably is going to be out there. It's probably going to be Pittman, Downs, and A.D. Mitchell as your top three guys. Pittman, and the thing about Pittman is I don't have this confirmed, but since he didn't practice today and the past few weeks he's been full in practice, that back injury might be flaring up again here towards the end of the season. So In my opinion, Drake, it's going to have to be a really big Josh Downs game. And if Josh Downs isn't able to do that, he's going to have Roger McCreary on him for most of the game there in that nickel spot. I think this Colts offense could really struggle. And Anthony Richardson is going to be looking for Josh Downs, especially if they bring pressure. Got to get the ball out quickly to Josh Downs. But if Josh Downs is healthy, Josh Downs is ready to go. And as we saw last time against this Titans team, Josh Downs actually had a fairly successful game. He had 7 catches for 66 yards and that touchdown, Drake. So honestly, I could see a repeat performance of that. I think Josh Downs is in for a very, very big game. He's obviously going to have the matchup on McCreary again. And I do think that Josh Downs is going to be able to quickly win. And it might be the driving catalyst for this Colts offense on Sunday. What do you think?
I mean, before we get to Josh Downs, I think I need to ask you a question, Andrew, that I've asked you a couple times. Wouldn't it be great if there was some receiving tight ends on the team?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no kid.
Always got it. When you talk about pass catchers with the Colts, you always have to talk about the wide receivers. I think that if Pittman's limited again, and you're kind of looking at Pierce, like, could he play? Of course, right? But with a concussion like that, it's difficult to just turn him over in a week. You saw it happen with Bortolini too. So I love Josh Downs this season. I know it's been a really tumultuous year for the wide receiver group, but Josh Downs leads the team. I think he might now be behind Pittman as far as team leading catches, but he's been the most consistent option. He's made not just quick win plays, but he's made plays down the field. He's made guys miss. He's outran people. He's made big catches. I mean, he's just a big play machine when you need him to be. So I think that after you kind of had a down performance against the Broncos, this is a golden opportunity, especially if Pierce can't go. And holy cow, if Pittman's limited or can't go, you're looking at Downs as your number 1 receiving option, and AD Mitchell's your 2.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but protecting the football is going to be at a premium in this one, Drake.
Huge.
Another stat of the day presented by Busch Light. The Titans are 30th in the NFL in turnover differential with -14. Meanwhile, the Colts are 20th in the NFL at -4. So of 10 turnover difference there, Drake, the Titans offense, mostly thanking Will Levis with 12 interceptions on the year. The Titans offense gives the football away a lot. And so the Colts offense has done it at times this year, but not to the level of the Titans. However, when you look at that Titans secondary, I mean, you're looking at Amani Hooker, the safety for the Titans, who has 4 interceptions on the year. Nobody else on the Titans has more than 1, Drake. So what that tells me is Amani Hooker is that ball hawk in the secondary. Testing that defense deep with Amani Hooker, you're not likely going to have Alec Pierce. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Colts actually try to attack deep, whether it is AD Mitchell, Josh Downs, Pittman, whoever. But Amani Hooker is their ball hawk. So I think the Colts need to be a little bit careful is putting the ball up in the air or putting the ball in harm's way when Amani Hooker's in the area.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, this is a golden opportunity. I know that it's a stout defense, but this is a defense that isn't really out there taking the ball away much through the air. Now, I will say they definitely have the capability of doing it, and they just showed it against a guy like Joe Burrow. So if they can do it against Burrow, they can absolutely do it against Anthony Richardson. But I think that if Richardson can potentially avoid just hucking it down the middle of the field, right? Because you're talking about Amani Hooker is playing safety. So if you just throw the ball, overthrow it, down the field, or they're too high or whatever, you're going to put the ball in harm's way. But again, I really hope that there's a game plan to try to ignite the quick passing game, because that'll open up a lot more downfield, maybe put Hooker in one-on-one situations, for some big plays potentially.
Yes. And how I talked about Will Levis giving the football away quite often. Well, Will Levis isn't going to be out there on Sunday. Brian Callahan of the Titans have announced that they are benching Will Levis in favor of Mason Rudolph. So Drake, different quarterback. The Colts have seen Mason Rudolph before. They actually saw Mason Rudolph last year again when they played the Pittsburgh Steelers. So definitely used to Mason Rudolph. The Colts came out on top in that game, but Rudolph so far this year in 5 games, he's got 1,015 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And then when you look at the Titans passing offense as a whole, another stats Matt stat of the day, the Titans are 31st in the NFL in passing efficiency. The Colts are 15th in the NFL in defensive passing efficiency. So say what you will about the Colts pass defense or Colts defense just in general, Drake, but the Colts have done their job against the pass. Certainly last week you saw it against Bo Nix. The Colts pass defense may have had their best game all season. Now, can that translate over this week against the Titans? I really don't see why not, because Bo Nix had been going on a run. Now, Mason Rudolph definitely not the same type of same type of quarterback that Bo Nix is, but in order to do that, I do think that Mason Rudolph isn't exactly the gunslinger that Bo Nix is either. You're going to have to pressure him more into mistakes than Bo Nix, because Mason Rudolph will take those checkdowns a little bit more. So Drake, what are you expecting out of this Colts pass defense against Mason Rudolph and the Titans passing offense?
I just think that you're dealing with an offense that's struggled, up front. They have. And so it's like, I think that we've said this twice. I think this is the second time, golden opportunity. And now you're talking about for the defense. And, you're talking about an offense that, like you mentioned, does turn the ball over. Mason Rudolph has one more touchdown than interception. Interceptions on the season. So he's not exactly out there killing it when he's throwing the football. They lean very heavily on the ground attack. You got to get something going from Tyjae Spears. You got to get something going from Tony Pollard. Okay. So if that doesn't happen, you're asking Rudolph to go out there and command most of the offense. You're probably going to get some opportunities to take it away. So will they get 3 interceptions? I thought that, like you said last week, I was marveled at how well they turned the football over against Bo Nix. I mean, he had taken care of the football fantastically up to that point. So I think that the opportunity there for at least 1 or 2 is, I hope that we see a big game from the defensive pass rush. That's what I want to see. Rudolph can't get out of the pocket like Levis can. Levis might be a turnover machine and he might just throw it downfield as far as he can, but he can run. He can get out of the pocket. He's a big dude to bring down. Rudolph's far easier to hit in the pocket. So I'm looking at the defensive front, hoping they get at least 4 or 5 sacks maybe.
Yeah, certainly. And when you do look at the Titans offensive line, Drake, obviously Peter Skronsky in their guard is pretty solid. JC Latham as well, their rookie, is on the better side. But when you get over and you start looking at the center to right side of this offensive line for the Tennessee Titans, it is pretty bad. I mean, you look from Dylan Reduns at right guard, Nicholas Pettit-Ferry at right tackle, Daniel Brunskill at center, who's their backup center, by the way. It hasn't been good for the Titans offensive line. So this could be a game where the Colts pass rush really gets after Mason Rudolph. And I'm talking about DeForest Buckner, who has a sack in, I think, 3 or 4 straight games now. Latu, needs to start still turning more of those pressures into sacks. Kwity Paye, I think has a chance to get after it, but Dio Dangbo even. But yeah, Drake, I think it's going to be crucial to really pressure Mason Rudolph, because again, he's not the type of guy that'll just sling it down the field. He'll take those checkdowns, but at the same time, I think you can really get after Mason Rudolph and start to rattle him the more that you do get after him in the pocket. So this Colts pass rush really needs to step it up. They're going to be at home. They're going to be on their own turf. So it wouldn't shock me at all to see the Colts get multiple sacks in this one. When the Colts played the Titans earlier in the season, though, Drake, 0 sacks against Will Levis. That has to change, has to be different against Mason Rudolph. Again, I don't think the Colts are going to get out there and get 6 sacks, but if they don't at least get a couple of sacks on Sunday and are consistently pressuring Mason Rudolph, then again, I do think that's a problem. The Titans did use a lot of quick game in that last game so that to keep the pressure off of Will Levis. Wouldn't surprise me if they try to do that now this time with Mason Rudolph. If so, then I think Gus Bradley can really try to prevent that by just making Mason Rudolph hold on to it a second longer. That I think you could see the Colts defensive line really get after it.
Yeah, and you've seen Gus Bradley adjust far better in the second half of the season. You know, obviously you still have moments where you're like, wow, what happened with the defense? But look no further than what just went down against the Broncos. I know they allowed 31 points. The Colts' entire team did, right? But man, dude, I mean, I thought Gus Bradley was dialed the hell in that game. I thought he made Sean Payton's offense look very silly at times. So it's there, and you're hoping that a guy like Mason Rudolph, because Colts and backup quarterbacks, man, when they face backup quarterbacks, they just don't do the best against them. But they've seen enough of Rudolph that I'm hoping that they're able to get to him because even though he does get rid of the football quickly, like you said, if Bradley can get enough coverage for even just a split second, I think that offensive line is weak enough that you get plenty of pressure on Rudolph.
And if you remember in that first game, Latu was close a couple of times on Will Levis. That was week 6. Latu has improved quite a bit since that matchup. So wouldn't surprise me to see another Latu sack on Sunday. But Drake, I think the biggest threat for this Titans offense has got to be in the backfield with Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard coming over from the Dallas Cowboys has really had, not a fantastic season, but I think he's had a solid season. 982 yards, averaging 4.3 yards per carry, with 5 touchdowns on the ground. And then he has also 39 catches for 233 yards through the air. So they definitely use Tony Pollard a decent amount. And here's another good, here's just kind of shows you the impact of Tony Pollard, Drake. The final stat of the day, Tony Pollard has 831 yards after contact. So,
wow,
which is insane. You look at it and on the season, Tony Pollard total has 982 yards. 831 of those are after contact, which is the 5th most in the NFL. 84.6% of his yards are after contact, which is the 6th highest rate. And he's also been contacted behind the line of scrimmage on 47.4% of those carries. So Tony Pollard is making a lot out of a little this season. When you again talking about that pretty porous offensive line of the Titans. And here's the bad part, Drake. The Colts have allowed 3.5 yards after contact per rush, which is the 5th most in the NFL. Yes. You got to wrap up Tony Pollard this weekend. Now, the Colts have done a much better job in recent weeks of not missing as many tackles, wrapping up the ball carrier. I'm talking about Zaire Franklin, Nick Cross, EJ Speed, those guys in particular. It's got to continue on Sunday. You cannot let Tony Pollard just run wild. You can't let Tony Pollard shake off tackles. I remember in that first contest against the Titans, Drake, where in the first half, the Titans drove right down the field and it was like a 3rd and long dump off to Tony Pollard or run to Tony Pollard. And he broke like 5 or 6 tackles right up the middle on the way to a touchdown. Can't happen this time. Absolutely cannot happen. Tony Pollard is their number 1 weapon. You can't allow him to just run free, break those tackles, and turn what should be a 1 or 2 yard gain into a 5 or 6 yard gain. And it just allows the Titans to drive right down the football field.
Yeah, and so the long run for him this year was against the Dolphins. When they beat him 31-12, where he had a 41-yard rush. Against the Colts, his long was 23. Okay. Mm-hmm. But he had 93 yards, which was one of his best games of the year, and his most yards per carry on 17. He had 5.5 at the end of the day, and he had that touchdown. That's the entire – I'm not saying that he's the entire offense. Obviously, there's other playmakers, right? But when you see how bad the Titans have struggled, and just those stats are so telling. Holy cow. He takes shots behind the line of scrimmage and just keeps on going. So he's not going to give up. He's not going to quit. And if you lose too many times, he's a guy that's fast enough to also just break away from you. He's a very good running back. I think he's really underrated. So got a lot of respect for Tony Pollard, and I think that he's basically, like you said, making a whole lot out of nothing with an offense that is just spiraling right now.
Exactly. And then finally, we can't not talk about Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley has been the leading receiver for the Tennessee Titans, 779 yards receiving, only 3 touchdowns on the year, 53 catches. And really, he's been overshadowed recently by a Nick Westbrook-Akine, who, while Westbrook-Akine only has 393 yards on the season on 23 catches, he's got 8 touchdowns. So Nick Westbrook-Akine has been their big time threat, at least deep. But Drake, in that first matchup against the Tennessee Titans, it was DeAndre Hopkins that was getting most of the targets from Will Levis, 4 catches for 54 yards, had 6 targets. And while Calvin Ridley did have 8 targets in that game, so still more than Hopkins, 0 catches for 0 yards. I don't expect that this time. I don't expect Calvin Ridley to be held without a catch. But I do think that Samuel Womack and Jalen Jones can repeat what they did against the Titans earlier in the year and just make things difficult on Calvin Ridley. Don't allow him to take over the football game. And I think if they do that, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and I mean, Calvin Ridley, I don't know if I've seen a player after he was asked, a question, so frustrated this season, maybe even in recent memory. I mean, this is a guy that you could tell was frustrated with his offense, and because of the change at quarterback and stuff, and both quarterbacks have struggled. You've seen him secure only 53 of 104 targets, but he is the biggest threat. He is pretty much the only threat, because after him, it's Nick Westbrook-Akine with 393 receiving yards, and then it's Tyler Boyd with 356, tied with Chig Okonkwo. So those are names that you thought were going to really blossom when they especially had DeAndre Hopkins. But, man, this has been a team that just hasn't been able to get anything going, especially through the passing game. But, again, you don't want Ridley to let you be the game where he breaks out and has his best game of the season here at the end of the year.
Yeah, I would agree. So, Drake, when we look at the X factors here, I don't think that we're going to see a massive blowout by either team on Sunday. That never happens between these two divisional opponents. Who do you think is going to be the X factor on Sunday that's going to need to step up for the Colts to get the win?
Oh, man. I'm going to go with Latu.
Okay.
Actually, it's 2. It's Latu and Pay, because like you mentioned, he got so close the first contest. You're talking about Levis, who is far quicker at getting out of the pocket. He was able to step up into the pocket. I think that you're going to have enough support from Stewart and Buckner that you're going to be able to have opportunities here to pinch the quarterback right in there and just be able to get those sacks in the pocket. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have one from Latu, one from Pay, because I do expect the Colts to get at least 4 as a team.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said earlier, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Latu get a sack and start wrecking havoc in the backfield. It would certainly help, even if the Colts or the Titans have to pay more attention to Latu and start using a guy like Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears as a chip on Latu rather than using him in the quick passing game. But for me, it's going to be Josh Downs. Drake. Josh Downs in the slot. He had a big game against the Titans last time, and I really think because of Anthony Richardson struggles against pressure so far, especially recently, that we are going to see the Titans send a lot of pressure. I really do. And in order to do that, you're going to need your go-to guy. Pittman's not feeling well. If Pittman's still having those back issues, if they flare it up again, it's got to go to Josh Downs. Josh Downs has to win quickly at the line of scrimmage. If I'm Shane Steichen, I'm trying to scheme up as much as I can for Josh Downs so Richardson can get the football away quickly, get it to his guy with reliable hands, and let Josh Downs go to work. I really think it's going to be a big game from Josh Downs. And if not, I don't know if the Colts offense is going to be very successful on Sunday. And that brings us to our predictions, Drake. Colts Titans, Lucas Oil Stadium, and the kind of really answering this question as to why the Colts have a lot of pressure to win on Sunday. Because if not, then I think things could potentially start to spiral. You're going up against a really poor team on Sunday, divisional opponent or not. You got to take care of business. You can't let this Broncos game linger into this week and linger into the rest of the season, because if the Colts do start to spiral and they lose these last 3 games or even 2 out of these final 3 games, then heads will roll at the end of the year. I feel pretty confident on that. So at the end of the day on Sunday, Drake, who you got? Did the Colts get it back into the W column, or do the Titans come into Lucas Oil Stadium and pull off the upset?
I do think the Colts are going to win this game. I do think the Colts are going to win this game because there's so much on the line, man. You're at home. You're coming off of a brutal loss to basically put your ass out of the playoffs. Embarrassingly, by the way. Some of your best players did some of the dumbest things on the field. And it's a team that's not good. They're just not good. And you got, Brian Callahan over there dropping cuss word after cuss word in interviews. I mean, you can tell that is an organization that it has some things to figure out. So I think that you cannot afford to lose this football game, especially after they just benched their young quarterback they drafted last year for a veteran that's not really that good. I think that it's all out there for the Colts to win and maybe win by 10, 13 points.
Okay. So you're getting on the Colts train. I do think they're going to get back and win this one as well. Let's take a look at the chat. CMDSR, Colts win a shootout 34-30. We've got Paul Wilson going 14-7 Colts. Sean Contright 27-24 Colts. I'm going 27-17 Colts. I do think that's going to be a pretty solid game for this Colts team. I think they were thoroughly embarrassed at how the Broncos game ended last week. I think Jonathan Taylor's going to have a chip on his shoulder to kind of redeem himself. I don't expect Anthony Richardson to necessarily light the world on fire, because again, I do expect the Colts or the Titans to bring a lot of pressure, but I do think Anthony Richardson is going to make a concerted effort to get the ball out of his hands quickly. I do think he's going to have more success scrambling against this Titans defense, and you could probably go for another rushing touchdown or 2 from Anthony Richardson on Sunday. So I think the Colts win, like I said, 27-17. I don't think that the Titans are going to put up much of a fight. I think that the Colts will get up early and kind of just sustain that through the game. Not saying it's going to be perfect, not even saying that we're going to see complimentary football. I think there's going to be times where one side or the other looks pretty bad on Sunday. May even be the defense is giving up a lot of yardage, but then they tighten up in the end zone. But I do have confidence that the Colts are going to win this one by 10 points. We got a couple of others. Tressa is saying Colts win 21-13, and then Hustleman Jones 33-10 Colts. So we're all on the Colts, and I think again, if they don't win on Sunday, that's going to be a bigger indictment of what's to come here over the next couple of weeks. Let's talk about the injury report. While it is only Wednesday, still want to run it down for you guys here. So here is the injury report for the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of guys didn't practice today. That's kind of normal on Wednesday. Mo Alley Cox with a hip, Ashton Doolin with the ankle, Matt Gay with the neck. Latu was ill. Alec Pierce dealing with the concussion. Michael Pittman with the back, and EJ Speed with the knee issue. I would still expect Michael Pittman to play through the back, but he's not going to be 100%. Really hasn't been 100% all year. The two that concern me the most, Drake, is Alec Pierce with the concussion. Looking unlikely that he plays on Sunday. And then EJ Speed with the knee. I still expect Speed to play, but really the big one's Alec Pierce.
Yeah, and again, it's going to be difficult to turn around and get him back on the field. Now, can it happen? Sure, but he's got to pass protocol. And I will say that, Michael Pittman's back injury and him not practicing, it is only Wednesday, but that's significant because if for no other reason, it's been something that's been lingering since it seems like week 1.
Exactly. Jalen Carlisle and Ryan Kelly were both full participants today. They were designated to return from IR last week. Just weren't quite there yet to play against the Broncos. I'd be very surprised if Carlisle and Kelly aren't both out there against the Titans on Sunday.
Yeah, and it'd be great because you're talking about your best coverage linebacker, and you are talking about Ryan Kelly. I know he hasn't had the greatest season, but he's probably still your best center.
Yeah, I would agree. Taekwon Lewis was also full with a rib injury. And then finally, cornerback Juju Brents, who's been out since week
Who?
2 of the season, dealing with that knee injury. Juju Brents was designated to return off of IR today, was a limited participant in his first practice in 3 months. Really good to see, Drake. The Colts had been talked about Juju Brents potentially coming back at the middle of December. And I think that for Juju's sake, you hope he's able to go this week. And because these final 3 games, really, really big for Juju Brents. I think the Colts want to try to get him out there, really try to evaluate him over these final 3 games and see what he can potentially bring into the 2025 season. Because honestly, his starting spot in this defense is not solidified because he hasn't been able to stay healthy.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you want to, like you said, you want to see what you have in your second round pick that was supposed to be your lockdown corner at this point, and he's just struggled with injuries. Last year it was 9 games. This year he's hardly played at all. So similar to Jelani Woods, only he's actually been able to see the field a little bit. But given what Jalen Jones has shown you, and given what a waiver pick like Sam Womack has provided, and potentially upcoming talent in the draft and maybe free agency. You got to step up if you're Juju Brents. So these are 3 big games for him if he can get back on the field as soon as Sunday.
Exactly. So long injury report for the Indianapolis Colts on Wednesday. It should look better on Thursday. Typically, if you're dealing with any little bit of ailment, they typically rest you on Wednesday. So I would expect quite a few of the DNPs to be full participants on Thursday. Drake, let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors. And we do have a couple of intriguing signings to talk about today. The first one, guys, the Colts added a tight end. Colts signed tight end Albert Okuabunami or Okuabunam. Okuabunam, we're just going to call him Alberto. Okay, Alberto, he is a former tight end of the Denver Broncos, of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was a sought-after prospect when he came out in the 2020 NFL Draft. He was either 2020 or 2021. I have to look that up again, but Colts signed him to the practice squad. Am I expecting him to make much of an impact this season? Probably not, but hey, the Colts are probably getting him in the building to see again what he could potentially help this team do down the line, and maybe he's on the roster to start next season.
Yeah, I mean, athletic as heck. He's had some injuries in his career, but I mean, given what this tight end group hasn't done, really, everything's on the table for this position right now.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. I do think that's not the only tight end move that we're going to see the Colts make this offseason. And then finally, the Colts made a claim. They claimed another San Francisco 49ers cornerback. Samuel Womack III was earlier in the year. Now the Colts have claimed Ambry Thomas off of waivers from the 49ers. Thomas was actually a former starter with the San Francisco 49ers, has been on injured reserve all season. He broke his forearm in the preseason against the Tennessee Titans. But Drake Thomas is a guy that was a former 3rd round pick. He actually started some playoff games for the 49ers last year on their way to the Super Bowl. And hey, I think this just kind of reinforces bringing back Juju Brents late in the season. You claim Thomas off of waivers. The Colts are taking a really hard look at their cornerback room for the future. Obviously, Kenny Moore is a stalwart there. Jalen Jones has kind of solidified his spot for now as a starter, but that other spot is up in the air. Womack has played really well. Juju Brents, you invested high draft capital in, and now you bring in Thomas, who has plenty of starting experience himself. So I think the Colts are, again, really looking at that cornerback room to see what they're going to roll with, not only through the spring months, but see if any of these guys could potentially be on the roster. Brent's probably will be, Womack, Thomas, all these guys will be on the roster, I should say, probably moving forward. But it's going to create some stiff competition for that other cornerback spot, which is what the Colts need.
Yeah, and it's not really a position that you did much with this offseason, right? So, now you're looking at, once Juju Brents went down, you had kind of a depth issue, and I know that they performed better than we expected that they would. But yes, I'm glad to see there's at least an an emphasis being put on providing depth behind, bringing Juju Brents back to practice, getting ready for him to play.
So the Colts taking on the Tennessee Titans this weekend. Drake, again, probably doesn't have much playoff implications on the line, but for the Colts, you do want to get some momentum going into the offseason. But more importantly, these last 3 games, I think, really need to be used to evaluate the young guys. That's why you're bringing Juju Brents back, to evaluate him. You certainly want to evaluate the rookies like Latu, A.D. Mitchell, Jalen Carlisle, Matt Gonzalez, Tanner Bortolini, if Ryan Kelly can't go. But the biggest one of all, we all know who it is. It's Anthony Richardson. You really want to see what Anthony Richardson can do over these final 3 games. Is he going to continue to struggle like he did against the Broncos? Or are these final 3 games going to look like what they did against the Patriots, against the Jets, against the Lions? Or is Anthony Richardson able to dig deep and go even a little bit higher than what he was able to in those previous 3 games? Because, again, you want to build some confidence and have some confidence that Anthony Richardson could build upon these performances heading into a incredibly crucial 3rd year.
Yeah, just like for the Colts, if they drop all 3 of these games or 2 of these games, if Richardson goes out there in in unison with them and doesn't play well, or just has these absolute collapses at quarterback, boy, oh boy. I mean, Andrew said heads are going to roll. Well, it's not just going to be front office people that might be on the line. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that aren't going to be going well for the Colts. So these next 3 games, they're easy opponents. They might not have playoff implications, but the Colts still technically aren't out of it, and they mean everything to Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, and Chris Ballard's tenure.
Yeah, exactly. So that's our show for tonight, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Some really good questions and super chats tonight. Yes. So I want to give a shout out to Hustleman Jones, Yim, Paul Wilson, Joe McHenry, all of you guys. Fantastic questions tonight. Really good conversations. And thanks for joining us to talk about Colts Titans, which may not be exactly the most exciting game, but I'm sure Colts fans will be tuning in to see Anthony Richardson and to see these young guys and see how they perform on Sunday. Again, if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts _SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell. Make sure you turn on the notifications so you never miss us, because, guys, next week on Monday, I'm going to be out of town Monday night, so we're not going to be live. Drake and I are going to record the show early, post it on Monday night. It'll still be at the same time, but unfortunately it won't be live because I will be heading out of town later that day. But you still want to turn the notifications on so you never miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. And as CMD SR says, smash the like button on the way out, please, as well. Really appreciate it. Drake, what you got on horseshoehuddle.com? I know the people want more Colts content. Tell them what they need to go check out.
I have why the Colts must dismiss Chris Ballard. I have why Anthony Richardson can't afford a pitfall, like I just mentioned, to finish 2024. And then we got a trio of Colts who must bounce back against the Titans. Little spoiler, one of them is number 10.
Check those out. Myself gave a little bit of insight and a little bit of just get to know you on Ambry Thomas, the new Colts cornerback. And guys, I'm going to have a piece out tomorrow about Anthony Richardson's thoughts and where his mindset is, kind of what he's focusing on as he heads into this matchup with the Tennessee Titans. So check that out, as well as everything else on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL. And guys, we'll be back Monday night. Won't be live, but we'll still be back Monday night to recap this game between the Colts and the Titans at Lucas Oil Stadium. Are we talking about a victory Monday? We're talking about another loss for this Colts team. We'll have to see what happens. But everyone, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the college football playoff. There's some fantastic games out there. Go Irish as always. And we'll see you right back here on Monday night talking more Colts football with all of you.